MLS teams enter the US Open Cup, and we'll get an update from DC as the US national team gets ready to face Brazil, next on The Daily. The Daily for Tuesday, May 29th with Greg Lalas. I'm Jason Saghini. I hope you had a great holiday weekend. Plenty of MLS drama over the weekend, but we are moving on to US Open Cup drama because there are 14 MLS teams in action tonight. This is the 99th edition of the US Open Cup, Greg, and it should be exciting.
Yeah, a new format means that all 16 US-based MLS teams jump into the tournament in the round of 32. They will all take on lower division sides, and there are some tantalizing matchups coming up. The one that I think is really going to be interesting, the San Jose Earthquakes hosting the Fort Lauderdale Strikers. This is like an old NASL matchup from the 70s or the 80s, so that's going to be a lot of fun. The Tampa Bay Rowdies, another former NASL team, will be hosting the Colorado Rapids. And Tampa Bay Rowdies head coach Ricky Hill, who scored a famous goal back in the 80s in the English FA Cup, came out and I think he said it perfectly. David and Goliath and all those other cliches, we have nothing really to be intimidated about. So I think these lower division teams, they have a lot of players that are trying to prove that they belong still in MLS. You look at a lot of these teams, Carolina Railhawks have 7 ex-MLSers on their roster.
The San Antonio Scorpions are another one of those teams. Ryan Cochran, Kevin Harms, former guys from MLS, but also Josue Soto on loan from the Houston Dynamo is going to be playing against the Dynamo in this round. Some other updates from Sporting Kansas City. Seth Sinovic, who we saw cut his hand open, his good hand. He's got one in a cast. Now he's got one in a bandage. He will be ready to go tonight as Kansas City jumps into the tournament. I think the other thing to mention here, Kai Kamara, Roger Espinoza, gone on international duty, so they will be down a little bit against a good Orlando team.
Yeah, this is an Orlando team that has huge aspirations, actually. They've talked often about wanting to become an MLS team somewhere down the line, and Orlando City, they've been doing a lot to try and make that happen.
All right, and John Kempen, the 19-year-old goalkeeper for Kansas City, expected to start in that game. Check out MLSsoccer.com tonight. There's going to be a huge chat where you can follow all of the games, figure out what's going on, and get all the updates as the night goes on. Other big news coming out of the weekend, the U.S. beat Scotland 5-1. Their eyes now move to the Wednesday night game against Brazil in D.C., and our own Simon Borg is down there with the U.S. team.
Thanks, guys. There's good news and bad news for the U.S. national team ahead of Wednesday night's match against Brazil at FedEx Field. We were at yesterday's open practice session at the University of Maryland, and all 23 players trained. That's including Clint Dempsey, who's coming off a right groin injury, and Jozy Altidore, who only reported to camp yesterday. That's the good news. The bad news, I asked Dempsey whether he was ready to start against Brazil. He flat out said no. The issue, fitness. He says he can't go a full 90 just yet. But there's nothing that can dampen the enthusiasm surrounding this U.S. national team, still basking in the glow of that 5-1 win over Scotland. Klinsmann telling us yesterday that he expects the U.S. to, quote, show a really good game against the Brazil side that already announced Neymar will play. Check back for more coverage from both teams' practice sessions later today, as well as Klinsmann's pregame press conference. That's all we have from D.C. Back to you.
Thanks, Simon. Well, Greg, Jurgin Klinsmann really looking to measure the U.S. team against a strong Brazil team here on Wednesday.
Yeah, Klinsmann came out in the press on Monday and said, look, the game against Scotland, the U.S. played very well, but going up against Brazil is a whole other story, and he's absolutely right. The Brazilians are bringing lots of attacking firepower. Pato, Neymar, Hulk, just to name a few of them. And those three in particular will test the U.S. backline a lot. I'm very curious to see what Klinsmann does in the back. We saw all the attacking against Scotland. That's fine. We know the attack, especially with Jozy Altidore now coming back into the fold. But what can they do in the defense against this team? Does Oguchi Onyewu come in order to handle the size of Hulk up top? Will maybe Edgar Castillo come in on the left side, bring even more speed to the outside flank to deal with a Neymar or a Pato or something like that? And is Bocanegra still going to be the leader that we've expected from him over the years? This is the test, I think, against Brazil. How does the backline fare against a side like this?
All right, we'll have plenty of updates coming to you from DC. Our own Simon Borg is down there. Also, Extra Time Radio, you can get it later on the site. We'll be talking about this U.S.-Brazil game. All right, Greg, let's take a look at the Castrol Index update, the weekly top performers. A lot of forwards up there.
Yeah, and it starts with Alvaro Saborio, who had 2 goals for RSL in their victory on Saturday, followed by Sayer Sen, who had a terrific game against DC United for the New England Revolution. Jaime Castrillon, who got the winner for Colorado at home. Steven Leonard, who sparked that comeback against LA in midweek. He had such a good game on Wednesday. And finally, Andrew Wenger, the rookie for Montreal, got a goal for the Impact and showing why he was that #1 pick.
All right, moving on to the overall Castrol Index. Thierry Henry still finds himself up top, and it's 5 forwards in the top 5.
Yeah, Henry is followed by Sayer Sen from New England. Danny Kuverman's from Toronto FC at number 3. Maybe a surprise considering there's a TFC guy in the top 5. And then Kai Kamara from Sporting Kansas City. And the MLS boot co-leader right now, Chris Wondolowski at number 5.
Monday was the formal introduction of the new designated player up in Montreal, Marco Di Vaio. Greg, what did you take from the press conference?
Well, it was interesting what he had to say about what it means to be an expansion team. He actually compared an expansion team to a team that's fighting relegation. And I thought that was really interesting when there's so many conversations in our world about relegation promotion, single table, and all of that. And here he comes out and he says, look, it's basically the same thing as fighting for relegation. It's like fighting for the playoffs. And then Di Vaio came out and he said, we are a team that's in a good position to make the playoffs this year.
All right, well, we'll see what position they are in the power rankings. That comes out later today. You can check that out on MLSsoccer.com, as well as the Power 5, taking a look at some of the best dribblers in MLS. And one more reminder, Extra Time Radio, you can get that later on this afternoon on iTunes, Buzzsprout, or on MLSsoccer.com/extratime.